I've got a lot of things to say about this French team.
That's good, because we're going to have to talk for like 20 odd minutes about them.
Most of them are quite positive,
Yeah.
okay? But there's one thing I think that has really boiled my blood about this, that, you know, I've generally been quite an outspoken fan of this French team and their players and so on, and everything that Fabien Galtier's done with this French team. However, there's something he's done which isn't quite morally correct. Fabien Galtier has gone for a 7-1 split on the bench.
We are assuming, based on the leaked team,
Yes, this
which
could
may
have
have changed
aged
by
badly.
the time you're watching this.
And if that has happened, then Fabien Galtier, I forgive you. But otherwise, it's not morally correct.
It's those goggles. He can't see justice through them.
Sears Duru. Anyway,
Yeah, it keeps Canadian props away from his vision.
Indeed.
He's got no idea that... the first 3 players that came to my head were all hookers. That's really annoying. And I was like, quick, I've got to come up with another Canadian prop
shit,
quickly.
the first 2 players who come to my head are hookers as well.
Yeah.
Damn.
I
Anyway,
was panicking. I was
this bit is over.
Yeah.
We've really
Jake
struggled.
Nicky.
Good player.
Yeah.
Anyway, France are playing Italy in the rugby this weekend.
Yes, they are.
Now, this is an interesting game because Italy mixed first couple of rounds for them. They were really disappointed about what happened with the Scotland game.
Yeah.
Wales, they came away with a victory, which, after talking about it, we concluded was a really good result for them.
I think it's an important result rather than a good result.
Yes. That's the way of putting it. And safe to say, if they beat France, it would be considered a huge scalp. Now, what for you, against this particular French team, focusing on Italy to start with, what for you do you think constitutes an important or good result? You can take your pick which one you're going to go for.
I think this is the game that Italy are probably targeting for this year's Six Nations, right? The England game's at Twickenham. That is another game that if it was in Rome, they could probably go, this is the day we beat England for the first time ever. However, France, they have beaten twice in the Six Nations era. Twice ever in history generally, but they haven't done it for almost 15 years now. You know, you're going back to 2014, so you're going back still quite a long way since they last managed to beat France. And yet, I think Quesada is an incredibly ambitious coach, and you look at the way that they have prepared for Six Nations in the past, it's very much built week on week. And again, this comes up in the Six Nations documentary in Full Contact, that they very much he likes to build on what they're doing and build belief. And once you have that belief, he then starts to build on it and add bits and add in bits and add in bits. And what we've seen of Italy the last 2 weeks is one game against Scotland where they were quite frustrating to watch, I think, particularly from an Italian point of view, where they were not quite as fluid and as fluent as we're used to them seeing. They were having moves they were running where balls were hitting the floor and they weren't quite in the full flow we got used to them seeing. They were the same at the start of the autumn against Argentina, and they then built for their final performance of that series against the All Blacks, where they were superb. And defensively, they were so good, they were so fired up, they were so up for the game, and they attacked reasonably well. They didn't take nearly enough of their chances, but then when they did get a chance, they took it and they managed to keep themselves in the game until that, late taking a chance on Bowden Barrett ending up waltzing over for a try in the last play, which was unfortunate. But I think the model of what Quesada is looking to do is in that performance against the All Blacks. I think that is what they'll be looking to emulate. And against Wales, they then kicked very well and they were very conservative and they shut the game down and they won no matter what, with the conditions being terrible and pressure on them. And that is the first time against Wales if they've ever won a game in the Six Nations where they were favourites. And that is hugely significant.
Yeah.
Because they're used to being underdogs. They're used to having no target on their back. And so to come away with that win, to be in the habit of winning a little bit, and now to be in a position where they can look at this French team and go, okay, we've got a model of how we need to play. We almost beat the All Blacks. This French team is more vulnerable because they're more used to losing their head. They take more risks. They're less liable to, if things are going badly, shut the game down and play much more conservative rugby. France play like France at all times, to their detriment, often. In a way, Toulouse don't. Toulouse, when the game gets tight, are capable of shutting the game down. Galtier's France don't. And there is a chance that that is their undoing this weekend.
I think from a French perspective, to me, there's 2 areas that are going to win this game, right? The first of them is just defence, sheer defence, because Italy throw a lot at them. They're an unpredictable attack. They like to run this wedge formation. What was the term he put?
The Scorpio formation.
The Scorpio formation, where you've got 4 or 5 forwards or centres, I guess, but big men running at you hard, and you don't know which one is going to get it or whether they're going to flip it out the back.
Yeah.
There's a lot of options that they can go left and right, okay? So that is one thing Italy love to do, but I think the way that France wanted to think about that is they flip reverse it. Instead, it's we have loads of options in our defensive line who can fly up and spoil that, right? We've got Morfana, who is really, really disruptive on D. We've got Dupont, who loves to fly out of line, make huge shots, get turnovers, right? You're looking at the likes of Rouma at number 8, you know, Barassi, yeah. There's so many players in that French team that they can flip that on its head, as Sean Edwards no doubt do, and go, this is a chance to really attack them and embrace that challenge. If they make a slip up, then you could see Italy making some line breaks, right? But generally, I think that's one area they'll really look to target.
Yeah.
The other one is their phase attack. Because if you look at the game against England, they only scored 1 try off their phase attack. And I think that is something they'll find quite disappointing because that has been the strength of France's game and Toulouse's game. I was going to say Bordeaux and La Rochelle's, but they obviously both have kind of the bullshit factor out wide and like a lot come off kick return and, you know, off set piece as well. However, you know, you look at this French team, you consider phase attack to be their thing. It's going through the phases, often going through this pick and go sequence that they love to do, right? And obviously they scored off that through Damien Penaud out wide against England. Otherwise, they mainly just scored off broken field scenarios. You know, you're looking at Dupont setting up 2 tries from just being ridiculous in that England game. And I think they'll be really disappointed with that and just will go, look, things will open up like that in any other game, okay? All we want to do is keep the ball, see how many phases we can get through, and let's just chip away at Italy and score some tries. Even if it means occasionally they get the ball turned over or they make a few errors, stuff like that will happen. I think from an attacking point of view, their first instinct in the opposition half will be to keep hold of it.
Yeah, and I think this is where it becomes a really interesting game for Galtier and for this era, because they have been, France, the best kind of one-dimensional. They have a really, really fluid attack. They play an awful lot through, since particularly Patrice Alcaraz came in as their attack coach, they've relied on bullshit more than anything else. And under Labitte as their attack coach, they were, he left after the 23 World Cup, to become head coach of Stade Francais, where he replaced
Gonzalo Quesada.
Yep. So it's all Italy's fault. But under Labitte, basically, it was similar, but they kicked an awful lot more. And where Alcaraz has instead gone, no, what we're going to do is we're going to build it all around getting players into space at all times, getting our bullshit players into positions where they can do bullshit. And we are seeing a huge increase in that, as we'll get onto in a video I want to do. At some point, the Six Nations, it's tricky with the breakaway and everything, but we are seeing a huge increase in the number of balls being played to width. You know, the percentage of balls that are going wide has gone up enormously. Last year, I think Ireland were the only team above 10%, and this year, I think 4 out of 5 are playing at least 10% of their balls to width, which is really significant. But it also then brings up the question of their defence, right? Which is that I think there was a little bit of Sean Edwards has been basically defending the same way as a coach for almost 20 years now. And he's obviously adapted it and tweaked it, but the system, the structure is exactly the same as it was when he first came into Wasps in 2004, 2005, thereabouts. He's been doing this for a really, really long time. And everyone knows the ways around it, right? It's a little chip over the top if you can get it to work. It's getting wide really, really quickly so that you get outside that 13 channel where they really blitz hardest through. And it's the same sort of tricks. Or it's punching up the middle repeatedly in the softer bit before they can get up quickly enough. Yeah. And his quick ball disables it. Those are the 3 tricks that really break down the Sean Edwards defence. And the tricky thing is, this Six Nations, we're seeing a change in the game, which is that one of those things in playing to width is coming much more into fashion, and teams are doing it more and more and being more and more practiced at it, better and better at it, and we're seeing more and more return from it, largely thanks to the kicking structures, right? And the change in the kicking laws have completely rejigged that and allowed for more teams to play to width, partly off turnover and partly because your winger has to stay back because kick chase is now powered up enormously. So they have to be watching for that so you can't blitz as hard. Yeah. So that has disabled a little bit, I think, of the Sean Edwards defence and made that perhaps a bit softer to go after. To what extent, I'm not quite sure. I don't think we've perhaps got the best examples of this so far, because England did it a little bit, but I'd be interested how a team like Italy or Scotland coming up managed to attack that. But yeah, I think there's a lot of real questions on France, and I think this could be a critical game for the Galtier era and to see whether they're able to continue this plan, because things are starting to creak a little with France.
I think another part of that is they're kind of refusing to partake in the trend that is going aerial a lot and going for contestable kicks. They're still liking to kick long and back their defence, which is extremely Shaun Edwards. No doubt he's had the biggest say in all of this. I think the way that it used to go was let's kick long to see if it opens up anything for our wingers. And now it's kind of the other way around. It's let's go wide, see what's on, as a means of dragging up their backfield, right? With Italy in particular, I think this is a really interesting one because with Wales' attack being so limited against them, they often just came into the line and just said, go on then, come at us.
Yeah.
And Wales' two best chances in the first 76 minutes of the game were Thomas Williams chipping it in behind for Josh Adams because Italy had a full line, a one potentially very stretched two-man backfield, and they poked it in behind, and Josh Adams unfortunately dropped both of those occasions. Now, the thing is with France, it makes you wonder how much of a risk that is and whether they can afford to take it. Because obviously the conditions will be better. I'm going to pretty confidently say that they're probably going to be better than they were. As well, you have Antoine Dupont, who is the best exponent of the attacking kick of any scrum half in the world. Yeah. And you've got Louis Bielbiaré on the left wing, who is the best kick-chasing winger in the world, probably at the moment. Curtly Aronson probably would have something to say about that. But those are probably the two if you're picking a 15 to revolve around this kind of game plan. And of course, on the other wing, they have gone, instead of Damien Penaud, they've gone for Théo Atisogbe. Now, it's an interesting one because Atisogbe is so early into his career that he's at that stage where he's just a young, confident kid just trying everything and seeing how long they can come off for, much like Bielbiaré was 12 months ago. It's difficult at this point to go, oh, well, he's better at this than Penaud is because he's younger, he's earlier in his career, and he's up against a world-class player for that position. But it's definitely something we saw against Wales that he's very, very good at. He's very well drilled on.
The one note I would add on Atisogbe, which is the one area of his game that I think is notably better than Penaud. I think he is line to line, like 100-metre sprint, he is faster.
Yes.
And I think the other thing is he's got a bigger boot on him. Like, I think Penaud's a better kicker, but in terms of distance he can punt the ball, Atisogbe has that on him.
Definitely.
And those are the two areas I'd look at and go like, I think Atisogbe's got that. So that suggests a priority for Galtier, because Damien Penaud is so good that you wouldn't drop him otherwise. So if you're bringing Atisogbe in, there must be a reason, and it feels like either they are doubling down on that kicking for distance and territory strategy, so they want everyone in their backline to be able to do it, and do it incredibly well, or it is just raw, we want pace. You look at that Italy back three, right, and it is not the quickest in the world. No. Like, Monty Ioane, brilliant player, nowhere near as quick as he was 5 years ago. Tommy Allen was slow 5 years ago, and look at him now. And then who'll be on the wing? Capuzzo, who is lightning, fine, yeah. But you're looking at two or three players you can kind of exploit for pace a bit, particularly if you
and
get
Capuzzo's short, you know.
Yeah, particularly if you can turn them. Perhaps they are slow to turn, and you can perhaps be ahead in business and in rugby. And yeah, no one gave me that idea, but like there is that potential there.
Yeah, for sure. And you think they've not even stuck Penaud on the bench is the important thing about this, that you would think, you know, they're going to go for this a little bit, see if Italy sit a little bit deeper in their back three, and maybe something will open up for Penaud. No, they've doubled down, as you say. Maxime Lucu being the one back on the bench. Obviously, Antoine Dupont, as we know, can cover anywhere in sort of the middle of the field. He could cover out wide as well, but it's pointless. You know, like you want him involved. Obviously, Morfana
can cover the wing.
Barassi as well can cover wider. Ramon can drop back. Like there's a lot of options with that. And the interesting thing about this is why they've gone for the 7 forwards. I think a big part of this is knowing that in every game Italy have had that second wind at set piece, and I think they're really wanting to resist that. The other part of it again is the pick and go, the noir ball as they like to call it. I think if you've got 7 lads that they're rotating on probably all at a similar time, bear in mind against Wales they brought on 6 subs at once, I imagine they're going to do something like that again to scare the living shit out of the Italian pack. That suddenly, you know, let's say that they do it, an attacking line out in the Italian 22, new lads all come on, they're fresh, and they're picking and going into Italians who've been tackling for 50 minutes. It's a pretty damn good plan. Obviously, I'm very much kind of mansplaining this, as it were, because Rossi Erasmus coined this, and look how effective it was. It's won 2 World Cups. He won it with a 6-2. He's won it again with a 7-1. You know, he considered going for an 8-0. You know, with having someone like a Quacker Smith covering out wide. With that French pack, because it's so big, it's powerful, brilliant at set piece, it's athletic, and the offloading game is absolutely superb. Yeah. It does make you wonder, why has he not tried this sooner? I think it's the perfect time to give it a go.
Yeah, there's also probably slightly lower stakes. It's not the opening game of the Championship like Wales was. And then you've got the Ireland game coming up in a week's time. And that is the match for Galtier. If they win that, they're in a really good standing to win the Championship. Their fixture list is probably kinder than Ireland's in terms of who they're playing home and away. So if they can win that game, they're in a really good position to win the Championship, particularly if they can win by more than 8 and deny Ireland a losing bonus point. That can change things entirely. And then you throw up the fact that if they don't win that, though, there is a lot of pressure on Galtier.
Yeah.
And Galtier probably, over the last few years, should have won more than one championship.
100% you should have.
And they should have been more successful than they have been.
Yeah.
And so that then raises the question. And I think very much he's going, okay, Italy are a serious threat, but is this 7-1 or is being able to make this many changes at once and rely that heavily on the noir ball something we can use against Ireland?
Yeah.
And there are similarities in how
test
Italy.
run.
Yeah. There are lots of similarities in how Italy and Ireland play.
Ireland are probably the best conditioned pack in the world, you know.
Other than South Africa.
Yeah, South Africa, it helps that they've got 2 packs, but obviously, Shakur, but obviously they are both like really well packed, well conditioned. Like, you know, it's hard to tell between the two, but either way, it doesn't matter because they're both unbelievable, you know. And yeah, I do think you're right that it might be a dry run for that because if you look at the strength of that bench, it's pretty tasty.
It's interesting, isn't it? There's a lot happening this weekend. This is the game that's flying under the radar a bit, but I think there's both a chance for an upset. I'm not expecting it, but I think that's on the cards. I think this is the game Italy probably targeting and going, this is our chance to do something big. And I think for France, they're going, the pressure's on here, and it's going to be even more on next week if we can win this. So they want to set up that potential Six Nations decider in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah. So I'd like to thank Mac Williams for inspiring the opening of this video. And please do not give in to the woke mind virus that tells you to stick with the traditional 5-3 split.
I'd like to thank Matt Williams for not being on ITV.
Yeah. We've not listened to Sir Clive in like 2 years.
That's great, isn't it?
It's nice. You left Twitter, so it's even better.
Yeah, I don't see it at all. I don't see him at all.